Hi everyone, welcome to QS Tag. Today we are going to see what is WireMock and how we can use it for creating stubs. First of all, to begin with, what are stubs? Let us understand what is a stub called and what is its usage. In an integrated system having multiple modules or microservices mutually interacting with each other using request and response, there are many services which are paid, and consuming these services for development or testing would incur additional cost every time you hit the service. To avoid this, these services are replaced by stubs, which replicate the response sent by these services back to the system. So, what is WireMock? WireMock is an HTTP mock server used to create stubs. Well, it has so many benefits. Some of them are it allows dynamic updating of its stubs without having need to restart the consuming services. The major benefit of using WireMock is that it is highly configurable using REST services. It can be used to simulate stateful behavior as well. Now let us understand an integrated system consisting of several modules which are interacting with each other on the basis of request and responses received. So these requests and responses are received in various formats, like the most commonly used formats are JSON, XML, or in some cases text data. So out of these services, there could be a scenario some of the services are paid. Let's say, for example, consider in this current system, module 4 is a paid service. So every time we are going to test the system, we are going to hit module 4 and we are going to pay for that hit. But we can avoid this additional cost by simply replacing module 4 with a stub, which will just create a mock response, a dummy response, as if in the same format the response created by module 4, so that the entire system can work even without the module 4 is there. This is also really helpful in the cases where the services are not available. So instead of using the actual service, the stubbed responses are used in the system. So now let's move on to the coding part. First of all, let's start with from where we can install the WireMock. To install the WireMock, you need to go to the WireMock official site. wiremock.org. Here you can download the running as a standalone process. You have to click this link and then you will be navigated to a page where you can download the standalone jar. Download the standalone jar, click on this link and the jar will be downloaded. Now to run this jar, first you need to open the command prompt. Let's create a new folder for it. Navigate to this path. Now to start the WireMock server, we need to press the command java-jar WireMock standalone server jar file name. Then you can also specify the port. and the logging as verbose. Now, once the WireMock server is started, you might see this kind of screen, this kind of textual display in the command prompt. Now our server is started. Once the WireMock server is started, you can see two folders created in the WireMock where the WireMock jar was placed. First is the underscore files. So this folder corresponds to all the all the responses. So you can keep all the files which you want to display as response over here. In mappings folder, you need to create the mappings where you are going to define the request template and you are going to specify the response. So to create the mappings, either you can do it manually by creating JSON files because WireMock highly supports REST services, or you can create it using APIs and Postman. So we will try here from the Postman. Let's create a new collection. And give it a demo. Stubs. Now, by default, the WireMock server is started on localhost port 08080. So the first thing which we have to do is create a mapping. So for mapping, you need to hit a post request. And the endpoint for creating mapping would be __admin / mappings. And in body, you need to provide the JSON in JSON format, the request and the response structure. In request, you need to provide the method. Let's say we want get method. Then you have to provide the endpoint. Let's create an endpoint. Let's say /API /users. Next item, response. In response, you need to provide the status. $200. Then body. Under the element body file name, you have to provide the JSON response file name. So let's put the name as response users.json. Now we will have to create a response under the underscore files folder. So let's go to files folder. create a file. It's a text file. Let's change it to JSON. Yeah, there we go. So this is a JSON file. Users, name, age, day. All right. Post mapping. Now before posting it, let's first get the current mappings. For getting all the initial mappings, we need to provide the endpoint as this. The request method would be get, and let's hit this. So right now the response code which we received is 200, which that means success, and the mapping count is 0. Now let's go back to posting the mapping and post it. So the status is 201, that is created, and in response we have received the mapping ID as well. So whatever mapping we will be posting, they will be saved in basis of ID. Now again go back to the get mappings. Let me edit this request name, get mapping details. Now let's hit this. Earlier the count was 0. Now let's see. You can see some data and the count is 1. Now the stub is created. Now next thing what you have to do is just to check whether the stub is working fine or not. So for that, let's create another request, add request. Here we need to provide the endpoint. So here we need to provide the endpoint which we have given while creating the mapping. It was API_users. Let's do a get operation. Okay, it says request not found because the endpoint is not correct. I've put one more slash, double slash at one place. I've removed it. Now let's retry. Okay, so this is the same data which we have entered in that JSON file, which is reflecting over here. So this stub, wherever you will use this stub, you will get this data in response, be it Postman, be it on any browser. Let's try it on this browser. You are getting this thing. Now this thing we have seen for JSON, the same we could do it for the XML responses. So for XML responses, let's create a response in XML format. Let's download one XML. Let's copy it in a file. Again, let's rename it. We have now we have the XML. Now let's post a mapping. For posting a mapping for an XML, we have to do a little changes in the body of our post mapping request. So first of all, let's change the file name. .xml, response xml.xml, and since WireMock by default supports all the JSON requests, so if you are providing any XML format, it is mandatory to provide the header content type and specify the type as text/XML. So let's do that. Headers, again hit post. 402 unprocessed and unprocessable entity. Okay, there is an error in the body. Okay, I forgot to put one colon. (201) created. Now we have replaced the earlier mapping with an XML response. Now let's go back and hit the stub again. Earlier we were getting this JSON response. This time we are getting this XML response. The status code is 200 and we have received the XML instead of JSON response. So similarly, you can do the mapping for a normal text response as well. So for that, the content type should be text/plain, and instead of body file name, you need to provide the body directly. Let's say I want to put a message, happy weekend. Let me post this. Now again hit the stub, happy weekend. So now that we have seen how I can create a stub with JSON, XML and text responses. Now the next very interesting thing about WireMock is that all these mappings are temporary as long as the server is running. Once the server is closed, you will not be able to see these mappings. So to save those mappings, you have to do one post request. So how to do that? Let me show you. We are going to add one more request. For saving all the mappings, the endpoint will be mappings/save. Request type would be post and body would be empty. So let's hit send button. Request is 200, response is 200. That means it's a success. Now, even if we close the server, let me close the server, and then if we start the server again, let me go back to the path where WireMock jar is there. Let me open command prompt here. Java-jar WireMock port 8080 verbose. Now let's go back and let's get all the mapping list. So you see it has not been destroyed. The mappings are saved. If we will not do the save mapping thing, so every time the server is restarted, your mappings will be lost. Next important thing. Now, how about you want to update the content in the response file? Let's say this is the response and I want to change the content of this response. Let's say I want to change the name from Ram to Ravan. I've changed this. Now and change the age to 42, ID to 2. Now let's again run the stub, see what response we are having. So we are having users ID to name Ravan, age 42. That is it from this session. So that was it for the WireMock tutorial. In this session, we have seen how to install WireMock and run the WireMock server, create a basic stub, how can we create XML, text and JSON responses, and how to create and save the mapping files. So that was it for this session. Thank you everyone for watching this channel. Please do like, share and subscribe if you like the content, and if you want more content or if you want me to create a video on any topic, please post it in the comment box. Thank you.